everyone, Liz Holter House, OBX for Sale Real Estate Group here, powered by Keller Williams. And I'm here to talk to you today about what has changed with buyers and the buyer agency agreement requirement. And what we're doing is we're talking about the recent lawsuit with the Department of Justice and the National Association of Realtors. First thing is the state of North Carolina has been doing almost everything that came out of this lawsuit anyway, and we've been doing it for a very long time. So we've had buyer agency agreements here since 1995. Technically, we're supposed to have them signed before we show any buyer any property, but the Real Estate Commission then came out with a disclosure called Working with Real Estate Agents that took place of this initial document, where we just put a buyer on notice that, as a buyer, here are your rights. You can hire a buyer agent, there's a seller agent, and then there's a dual agent. So that document was first and foremost to educate the buyer on the different types of agency within the state of North Carolina. Now, effective August 17th, the Department of Justice has said, in order for us to unlock a door for a buyer and show them a house, that buyer must enter into a buyer agency agreement with that agent, period. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is the law. So you are going to be asked as soon as you call a realtor to sign a buyer agency agreement. But wait, it's really not that scary, because if you are working with an experienced agent and you are working with an agent that prides themselves in educating you and providing good service, all the things, you're going to find this easier than you're anticipating right now hearing this from me. So you do have to sign a buyer agency agreement to get into a home. That buyer agency agreement, ours is multiple pages long, and it explains to you your responsibility to the buyer agent and our responsibility to you as your realtor, and it clearly outlines our relationship, our roles and responsibilities, how I will get paid as a realtor, whether it's going to be the status quo of how it's been through the years, where a seller is actually paying a real estate commission to a listing firm, and then the listing firm is paying me, or are you going to pay me? And yes, you might have to pay a commission. That's what the lawsuit says. But probably so far, actually, I don't think that's going to happen. The agreement states that the buyer is responsible for commissions. However, there are situations where others, including the seller and the listing broker, may cover this cost. What the Department of Justice wanted to make sure is that everyone realizes that real estate commissions are negotiable, but they've always been negotiable, always negotiable. The difference is the real estate commission offered to a cooperating agent, meaning an agent that belongs to the MLS where the house is listed for sale, was easily able to see what the real estate commission or compensation to them was going to be, whether it was going to be 1%, 1.5%, 2, 2.5%, 2.75%, 3, 4, 5, 6%. There's no standard fee. There never has been a standard fee. I know this has been talked about, but it's just not the case. I've been licensed since 1995, and there are times where the listing agency is maybe a discount listing broker and is offering a 1% fee, and I don't represent buyers for 1%. My buyer was willing to pay me our agreed upon compensation, but I said, wait, let me see if I can negotiate this with the seller first. And the seller agreed to pay the rest of my commission. It was just that simple. And I was able to do that through, a compensation agreement. And my buyer didn't have to pay anything, but he was willing to pay for my services. He's a repeat investor client. So is there a chance that you might have to pay a real estate commission to your buyer agent? Sure there is. What I would say to you is if you cannot pay that fee, you need to say this up front to your agent so your buyer agency agreement is written in such a way that you and they understand that that 2.5%, 3%, 2%, whatever that agreed upon commission is a commission that you cannot pay, that you cannot afford to pay, and that's okay. What is going to happen is you're going to have to give that agent permission to not show you a house that does not offer compensation to your buyer agent. And that way, we, the buyer agents, are protected against steering allegations or someone coming back and saying, well, you weren't willing to show me that house because you didn't get paid. I don't work for free. I don't expect you to work for free. We're not in the business to work for free, but there's also other things involved. My errors and omissions insurance and things like that do not cover me if I don't get paid. So it's bigger than just the statement, I don't work for free. It's way bigger than that. There's so much liability and stuff involved in the practice of real estate. And I don't think any of our buyers expect us to work for free. But I also respect knowing up front that the buyer is not prepared to pay that commission. And my job is to educate the buyer that there are multiple ways in which to get the commission paid on your behalf. I think we're going to see many things stay the same. I think we're going to see where the seller really understands and identifies with the fact that their buying pool is going to be potentially smaller if they don't offer the commission the way they've done in the past and allow their listing firm to pay the buyer firm. And so far, I've been on 5 or 6 listing appointments in the last couple weeks. I've just brought 3 new listings to the market, all of which are under contract at this moment in time. And every single one of those sellers understood and agreed and wanted to pay the buyer agent fee and the buyer agency firm fee. And they gave me permission to do so. In North Carolina, like I said, we have practiced agency law since 1995. Our listing agreement says to a seller, your fee is X, whatever we negotiate with that seller. And then from X, we agree to share X% of that listing fee with the buyer agent firm. And then the buyer agent firm pays their buyer agent. That's the way it's been. Our listing agreement clearly practiced transparency, and our sellers always knew that they were paying that fee. Our buyers should know if the agent was doing their job that their fee was being paid by the listing firm. Their representation was not free. I know that has been said in the industry, oh, don't worry about it. You don't have to pay me. And maybe some buyers believe that their agent was working with them for free, but I don't think that's the case. I think there was just an understanding that it was coming from the listing side. But our listing documents are completely transparent and have been for many years. So our sellers can still negotiate commission and oftentimes do. Most of the time they do. And then the listing agent will agree to share a certain amount of that listing fee with the buyer agent firm. What has changed and what is going to be totally different is we are no longer allowed to advertise to each other, agent to agent, through MLS, what that fee is or if there is even a fee. Did you hear that? We're not allowed to advertise in MLS what the buyer agent compensation is or if there even is a buyer agent compensation. So, what this means in the buying process is it doesn't mean that there won't be a compensation offered to the buyer agent from the listing side. It just means that we're going to have to figure out a system or a process in which to learn or figure out if there is a fee. The state of North Carolina has given us a new set of forms where we can communicate this to one another. If the seller has put his house on the market and is not offering a buyer agent fee, we can still try to negotiate one with him. We can either do it directly with him or we can do it through concessions, meaning he's going to pay a certain percentage of closing costs towards the buyer's closing costs. And then out of those concessions, you can choose to pay your buyer agent. So there is more ways now to figure out how the buyer agent is going to get paid. It's just not as easy and as transparent as it was before. To me, it's a lot less transparent. I think there's a lot of room for error and misunderstandings and stuff. I think it's very, very important at this time in real estate to work with an agent who truly understands this and who is experienced. Experience matters more than ever for so many reasons, but in this environment, it matters a lot. When you think about signing a buyer agency agreement with a realtor that you've just met, most buyers are going to say, whoa, wait a minute, I'm not ready to sign anything, because you are signing a contract between yourself and that buyer agent. You are hiring that buyer agent to represent you. And there are very specific things that we must do for you at that point in time. We become your fiduciary. In the buyer agency agreement, you also have to decide whether or not you're going to let us be a dual agent. Meaning, if it was my listing that I was bringing on the market and I knew it was perfect for you, would you feel comfortable with me representing both you and the seller? At that point in time, you're a dual agent. You don't have a strong fiduciary to either one. You become more of a moderator in between. There are some people who just don't know enough about the market, who are new, they've never bought a home, they've never bought a second home, that type of thing. I don't have a deep enough relationship with them to feel comfortable representing that buyer and my seller, and that is where I would then practice designated agency, or I would hand off my buyer to one of my trusted colleagues who could give you the time and attention that you need. I dare say there's a lot of agents out there that might not do that, simply because they're for a lot of reasons. But I just won't do it when I feel like my buyer needs a lot of attention and a lot of knowledge, and doesn't know enough about me to like and trust me at this moment in time, if that makes sense. And I just feel like that's a big ask. I love doing dual agency. It knocks a whole side out of things. Communications are faster, negotiations are faster, that type of thing. But both the buyer and the seller have to be comfortable with it, and they have to give us permission in writing to be a dual agent. So that's first and foremost. Also, hiring a buyer agency agreement, it protects you as a buyer, because everything you say to us now is to be held confidential. If we were not under a buyer agency agreement, that would not be the case. Also, signing that buyer agency agreement doesn't have to be forever, and it doesn't have to feel so scary. We have to have it in writing before we open that first door, or we are going to get fined, and we are going to get fined heavily, sometimes upwards of $1,000 per door. And that's not something I'm willing to do, and I'm not willing to risk my license for anyone. But I can make that buyer agency agreement comfortable for you. And what I mean by that is I can write it for a time period. I can write it for a day, 5 days, a week, 30 days. It doesn't have to be the standard blanketed form for 90 days or 6 months. And the other thing to know too is if we absolutely do not mesh as business partners, as someone you want representing you, I'm not going to hold any buyer hostage if they don't want to work with me. So all you have to do is have that conversation with me and just say, Liz, I don't want to work with you. And we'll just tear it up. It's just as simple as that. I'm not going to force anyone to work with me. Most of my business comes through agent to agent referrals and referrals from my past clients. I've been doing this since 1995. I think in all of that time, I've only had one person decide to work with a different agent and ask to get out of that buyer agency agreement. And I graciously let them out. That's not a big deal. We just need to make sure we're following the law. There are some touring guide papers out there that people are trying to create to make buyers feel more comfortable. I have decided that I'm not going to use these in my practice. We have a perfectly good document that was written by the North Carolina Bar Association and accepted by the Real Estate Commission. And why recreate the wheel? It's been created for us. I know that form well. I can explain it well, and I know it gives us all the protections that we need, and I just don't need another form. So I will be using the buyer representation agreement, the buyer agency agreement. It is important to know that if you're not able to pay a buyer agent commission, that you do need to give your client, that's okay. If we want to look at 5 or 6 houses, and 4 of them are offering a buyer agent commission, the other 2 just simply aren't for you. They're just not. And if we're not able to negotiate that fee and you're not able to pay it, those are just going to be houses that you're just going to have to skip over for now. I will say, if those houses don't sell because of the lack of a buyer agent fee or for whatever reason, that seller may, as time goes on and the longer his home sits on the market, he may renegotiate a buyer agent fee. So it doesn't mean that home is off the table forever. It just means it's off the table today, and we'll look at what we can look at. But there's going to be no surprises. You're not going to go out and look at property and say, okay, I want to buy this one, and I'm going to say, well, you can't unless you pay me 3%. It's not going to be that way. It'll be very transparent and very upfront, but you're also going to have to give your buyer agent permission to not show you homes that don't offer a buyer agent fee. So historically, sellers paid the listing broker a commission, which was then shared with the buyer's broker. And again, this led to the seller pays the buyer agent, which isn't entirely accurate. The seller's firm pays the buyer's firm. The buyer's firm pays the buyer's agent. That misconception resulted in the class action lawsuit driving these changes with the NAR settlement. North Carolina was not really pulled into that settlement or that lawsuit because we had agency law on the books. The fact that there are states out there that have never had a buyer agency agreement ever, and this is 2024, to me is mind-boggling. And it was a bit of a disservice to those buyers. So the fact that we're now on the same playing field and that we all have to have a buyer agency agreement, I do think that is better for the buyer. So let's kind of sum all this up. Choosing a realtor in this market in 2024 and beyond is more critical than ever to successfully closing on your next property purchase. With the changes of August 17th, there are lots of agents that didn't even know this change was coming. And to me, that's a bit shocking because it's been in the news, it's been talked about repeatedly. There's still a lot of confusion online. There are a lot of people talking about this and trying to educate one another on it, but every state is different. Every state has different laws. And somebody in North Carolina may be listening to somebody in California, and that's just not the way it is. We should be listening to our own brokers and our own state real estate commissions. And I am lucky and fortunate and grateful to work in such a great state. North Carolina real estate is always been super professional. Our real estate commission sees to that. We have continuing education that we have to do every year. We, as realtor members, we have to take ethics courses every so many years. But the big thing that that North Carolina has done with their partnership with the North Carolina Bar Association is they have armed us with a box of tools to use. We have a form for everything, which then keeps us as realtors out of trouble. We're not drafting law and trying to help you, write an addendum for one thing, but we're not attorneys, so we're not supposed to do that anyway. I just feel so blessed that North Carolina has given us so many forms and documents and so much guidance in just about every subject matter that we would need as agents. But if you haven't been in the trenches and you haven't been studying these forms, and if you haven't been paying attention to the changes, there's a lot of catch up taking place out there. And that's why I said more than ever, it really matters who you choose. And so I would hope that you would choose me if you are looking to buy property on the Outer Banks of North Carolina or in Northeastern North Carolina, the surrounding counties of Currituck, Camden, Pasquotank County. But if I'm not your choice, just make sure your choice really understands these changes and can represent you to the best of their ability. You deserve that, and experience does matter. I hope this kind of helps a little bit. Please be prepared to sign a buyer agency agreement or some sort of form if you want to see the inside of a home. Also, please know that this doesn't necessarily mean you, the buyer, is going to have to come up with another 2.5%, 3%, 4%, 2%, whatever that negotiated buyer agent fee is on top of your down payment. There are other ways for us to get paid. And that's, again, experience matters. You need an agent who knows how to get paid and knows how to represent you, and which, in my opinion, being a strong fiduciary for you means negotiating my fee coming from the seller or the seller firm, because I know that's what's going to make it possible for you to purchase a home. So your goals are always my goals. Just know that knowledge matters and that these new rules are in place for reasons. Whether we like them or not, we have to abide by these rules. They are law. You are going to have to sign this buyer agency agreement, but just know that there are options in the term of the agreement for how many houses, that type of thing, and any good agent is not going to force you into working with them. That form does protect us, though. If I show you a property and you decide to buy it on your own and go directly to the seller, or you decide to go to it with another real estate agent, that form protects me from procuring cause. I'm the one that showed you the house first. I earned that commission at that point in time, and then you would have to pay me. So there are protections in there in that document for both sides, as there should be. This is how I make my living. This is how I feed my family. And you want somebody who understands the laws and the rules and their responsibility to you, because your goals matter as well. So that's what I've got today. I hope that helps going forward and makes it a little bit less scary. And signing these buyer agency agreements gives you a little bit more education on what you need to know in going forward. And until next time, remember to like, follow, subscribe, and share. And I'll talk to you soon.